This is Music TTS and iOS here, and because iOS 9 support is going to be ending in a few weeks' time, as of the time of this recording, September 1st, 2018, I would like to give you guys some tips to help prepare for that support drop, which is going to be happening around the middle of this month. So, as of now, we've only got 2 more weeks, at least. So, let's get started. So if you have an iPhone 4S, an iPad 2, or an iPod Touch 5, anything that's on 9.3.5, or if you have a newer device that's on iOS 9 and you would like to, and any other device on iOS 9, these are the tips for you. So, the first thing, and probably the most important thing I'd recommend, is make sure that all your apps are up to date. So right now, the current version for YouTube is 13.33. If you're using an iOS 9 device and you're not updated to that version, go ahead, do yourself a favor, and update all of your apps to their newest version. So it could be YouTube, whatever you may have, like YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, any of that. Update all of that to your YouTube app. Update all of that. Go to your App Store. Go to your Updates tab. And there should be a thing on your Updates tab which should say Update All. Or you can just update in certain apps. But my advice would be to update all your apps so that when support drops, all of your apps are up to date. You won't be running the latest versions anymore after that drop occurs. But just make sure that all of your apps, all of your things, all that's up to date. So, again, to check that, go to your App Store, go to your Updates tab, and then there should be a thing and then on the Updates tab, you can either update individual apps or update all. I can't remember using iOS 9, although it was my first software that I've ever used. So I can't remember how the iOS 9 updates run off the top of my head. But just make sure all of your apps are up to date, so that when the drop happens, you are still running close to the latest version of the app. That's gonna become farther and further as more versions come out in the future. But it's better than when you're not completely up to date. Another good tip, I'd say, I don't really recommend it though, because I don't really know about skipping updates, but if you have a device that is on iOS 9 and it is updatable, I would recommend update your device to either update your device, I would say, because iOS 12 is coming out soon, I would recommend updating your device to a later version. If you have a 4S or an iPad 2 or iPod Touch 5, you're not going to be able to update because 9.3.5 is their latest supported software. But if you have anything newer than that, anything newer than those that I mentioned, that is on iOS 9 but is updatable, I would recommend clear up some storage. Clear up some storage and do yourself a favor and go ahead and update your device. If you're running an iPhone 5, the latest, if you're on an iPhone 5 or an iPad 4, the latest is iOS 10.3.3. But I would recommend, if you're on a much newer device, I don't think you should update from 9 to 12 straight away, because I don't know what the outcome's going to be, because I've never really skipped updates. But what I do recommend is if you have a device on iOS 9 and it is updatable, I wouldn't really recommend it or enforce it, but I would probably consider updating your device to a later version if you can't afford a new device and you still want to use the latest versions of apps. I would say you should update your device. Again, this is not possible if you're using any of the 5A5 processor devices. So that's the iPhone 4S, iPod Touch 5, and iPad 2, iPad 3, and iPad mini. Now, most iPhone 4S users aren't on iOS 9. A lot of them I know so far have downgraded to iOS 8 or iOS 6. But if you're not one of those people, or you have another device that's on iOS 9 and doesn't support updates, this will not apply to you. But if you're on a newer device on iOS 9, I would recommend update to a newer version if you cannot afford a device and still want to use the latest version of apps. So if you're still planning on being on iOS 9, update all of your apps to the latest versions that they support before support drops. But if you have an updatable device on iOS 9 and you still want to continue using the latest versions of apps, I would consider updating. I wouldn't really recommend it, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the outcome's going to be if you skip updates. However, it is something to consider. That's all I can say.